Hello and welcome to the history of Star Wars. Omega Ordain coming at you with the history of the second Death Star. And here we go. The DS-2 Death Star, also known as the Death Star 2, the Death Star Mark II, or simply the second Death Star, was a partially completed moon-sized battle station constructed by the Galactic Empire as the successor to the first Death Star, a larger and more powerful Death Star. The second Death Star's long-term purpose was similar to the first, to terrorize planets and star systems in league with the Rebel Alliance, through the use of its planet-destroying superlaser. However, the Death Star 2 also served another purpose, luring the Rebels into battle that would, the Empire hoped, destroy them once and for all. Though it's designed in the likeness of its predecessor's appearance and function, the DS-2 Death Star saw a technical improvement through the incorporation of millions of millimeter-size heat distribution tubes in place of the 2-meter-wide thermal exhaust port exploited by the Rebel Alliance at the Battle of Yavin. Secretly constructed in orbit around the forest moon of Endor, the Death Star 2 was larger than its 160-kilometer-wide predecessor and was constructed using more efficient methods. Positioned in synchronous orbit above Endor, the battle station was protected by a deflector shield projected by the ground-based shield generator, with the superlaser being the main priority. The weapon was completed in 4 ABY, while the rest of the superstructure was still under construction, after the Empire secretly leaked the location of the incomplete second Death Star to Bothan spies working for the rebellion. The Alliance fleet arrived at Endor and were shocked to find the laser fully operational. In the ensuing battle, Rebel ground forces managed to destroy the shield generator protecting the Death Star, allowing Rebel starships to infiltrate the battle station's reactor core and destroy the station. Combined with the deaths of Emperor Palpatine and his apprentice, Sith Lord Darth Vader, the destruction of the second Death Star was a significant defeat for the Empire. Within a year, the fractured Empire formally surrendered to the rebellion's recently introduced government, the New Republic. Upon completion, the Death Star 2 would have been an immense battle station 200 kilometers in diameter that featured 560 internal levels, which could house 2,471,647 passengers and crew. The space station was divided into two hemispheres at the equatorial trench, which itself featured a nested hierarchy of lesser trenches, along with 768 tractor beam emplacements, a multitude of docking bays, and an incomplete ion engine array used to rotate the massive installation. The outer shell of the battle station was made out of quandanium steel, with the areas immediately above and below the equatorial trench being heavily armored. On the outer surface were the station's decks, which consisted of a dense conglomerate of towers. Inside the station's 560 inner decks, which were positioned planetarily parallel to the equator, artificial gravity was localized throughout the Death Star 2. In the stacked inner decks, gravity was directed north to south, while on the surface decks, gravity was directed towards the center of the station, allowing gun crews to stand on the surface of the globe. The Death Star 2's two polar columns, which ran from the reactor to each pole, helped stabilize the station's rotational capabilities. The station's two command sectors were located at the north and south poles, with the south also serving as temporary quarters for the outer shell construction crews and as space for emergency replenishment stations for labor droids. Above the Death Star 2's main weapon, the super dish laser installed in the station's northern hemisphere, was the command bridge. Patterned after the original Death Star, the command bridge was where the super weapons systems were monitored and controlled. Located on the station's north pole was Emperor Palpatine's personal isolation tower, a 100-story tower which served as the Sith Lord's command center and personal abode while on the battle station. The tower, designed from the outside to be intimidating and menacing, was patterned after Palpatine's personal headquarters on Coruscant, the Imperial Palace, formerly known as the Jedi Temple. Before its destruction, the Death Star 2's superstructure was still incomplete. Large sections of the outer hull were still missing, exposing the inner decks still under construction. The most prominent weapon on the Death Star 2 was its immense superlaser, which was located above the Equatorial Trench in the Northern Hemisphere, and was visually identical to that of the first Death Star, powered directly by the station's hypermatter reactor. Energy was passed through an array of massive kyber crystals, forming a series of powerful laser beams. The 8 tributary lasers were then converged by the superlaser's exposed concave focusing dish into a single destructive beam, an improvement to that on the first Death Star. The redesigned superlaser required mere minutes as opposed to hours to recharge, and could be focused more finely, allowing it to fire at moving targets such as capital ships. Like the original superlaser, the power of the Death Star 2's superlaser could be controlled. Though its main purpose was the destruction of planets, the laser could be turned to a much lower power setting, suitable for destroying individual spacecraft. The Death Star 2 had extensive point defense capabilities, featuring 15,000 heavy and 15,000 standard turbo laser batteries, along with 7,500 laser cannons and 5,000 ion cannons spread across its outer surface, with the battle station housing 637,835 naval and army personnel. The installation boasted a large complement of TIE LN Star superiority fighters and their variants, stored for space-based encounters, and a plethora of all-terrain armored transports and all-terrain scout transports for ground surface operations. Along with its own laser cannon encampments, the Emperor's isolation tower was surrounded by the largest concentration of anti-starfighter gun emplacements on the station, placed at intervals as little as a few hundred meters. The guns also had improved fire control compared to all other cannons on the station. At the center of the station was its hypermatter reactor core, approximately 1/10 the diameter of the station itself. Cavernous reactor housed a main assembly consisting of a north and south tower, which were stabilized by regulators. The reactor core was encased in capacitor panels and supplied power to the entire station through 2 cylindrical polar columns, which ran the reactor to each pole. Subsidiary shafts ran from the polar column as well as from the 4 reactor shafts, bent 15 degrees in 5 places, that extended from the reactor to the outside of the station. In response to the original Death Star's destruction at the hands of Luke Skywalker during the Battle of Yavin, the second Death Star's design incorporated millions of millimeter-sized heat distribution tubes in place of the 2-meter-wide thermal exhaust port exploited by the Rebel Alliance. A pressurized explosion to the core was capable of detonating the reactor, an explosion which would be, like the first Death Star, catastrophic to the station. Hey, thank you for watching the history of Star Wars! Special thanks to Wikipedia and its contributors for all information you heard today. Very special thanks to my Patreons and to Royalty Free Tube for this fantastic background. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, ring the bell, join the channel, join us on Patreon. Any or all of these things can really help the channel grow. Thank you and have a great day! Bye-bye!